With Kenobi Season 1 now out of the way, there are plenty of fans out there who would love to see them come out with a second season, and feel there's still a story yet to be told with the character. And more than anything, I for one would just flat out like to see it happen, because I feel this would finally be the perfect opportunity for Disney to help bridge the gap on how this concept of Force ghosts or Force spirits truly work in the world of Star Wars, and how all that ties together from what we've seen so far within canon, which, let's be honest, at this point doesn't exactly tie together very well, due to the fact that they are definitely a few things they've done over the years that still haven't really added up for a variety of Star Wars fans. And if you're wondering to yourself, how could they possibly tie all this together in a way that could even make sense? Well, you're in luck, because I'm about to take you through exactly that. And if you love Star Wars like me and like to chase this type of thing down the rabbit hole, be sure to take the time quick to subscribe to make sure you don't miss out on seeing future videos like this. Now, before we start to piece together how they could go about that for the show, let's first quickly set the stage like I normally do to make sure everyone is fully caught up to speed and has proper context going into everything I'll be diving into, which for the purpose of this topic begins here at the time of Qui-Gon's death in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. As we know, the physical form of Qui-Gon dies here on Naboo, but his Force spirit managed to live on as he learned the means to retain an eternal consciousness some time prior to this point. And while his Force spirit was able to live on after the fact, he was only able to manifest his voice through the Force initially, which we see him do for the first time with Anakin here in Attack of the Clones, as he tries to convince him not to go ham on the Tusken Raider village.
Anakin!
However, a few years later down the timeline during Season 3 of the Clone Wars, we do see him appear in a spectral form for the first time on Mortis. However, this was only made possible because the realm itself served as an extremely powerful conduit of the Force, serving in other words, as Qui-Gon puts it,
"This planet is both an amplifier and a magnet."
So under normal conditions at this point, he still could not technically manifest himself in spectral form, but shortly after the events on Mortis went down, Qui-Gon reaches out to Yoda at the Jedi Temple and helps guide him to Dagobah initially, and later to the Wellspring of Life, or otherwise known as the Force Planet, in order to help Yoda learn how to complete the training he had failed to do prior to his physical death. And as Yoda arrives at the planet, he meets a set of Force priestesses who basically hold the keys to understanding how one can achieve eternal life, and they offer to help train him in this knowledge as long as he's able to pass a set of trials to prove he's worthy of harnessing such power.
You have chosen wisely.
Which obviously Yoda passes, of course, and after the events of Episode 3, he retreats back to Dagobah to not only stay under the radar, but also to be able to further commune with Qui-Gon and learn how to fully harness this newfound ability. Now at the end of the Kenobi series, as we've recently seen, Qui-Gon demonstrates for the first time that he has mastered the ability to project himself in spectral form without limitations, or so it seems, but where we're going doesn't stop here. As we move on to Season 1 of Rebels, which occurs approximately 4 years later, Ezra and Kanan visit the hidden Jedi temple located on Ezra's homeworld, Lothal, and Yoda is able to commune with them there while he's still living in the same way Qui-Gon appeared on Dagobah. Furthermore, beyond that, Yoda is able to transport a kyber crystal to Ezra utilizing the Force, very similar to the dice trick Luke pulled with Leia at the end of The Last Jedi. Now let's fast forward a year later in the second season when Ezra and Kanan revisit the temple. Yoda appears to Ezra and Ahsoka in living form. As we know, this wore down Luke to the point of death when doing this at the end of The Last Jedi. However, Yoda not only had the advantage of being present on Dagobah, which he describes,
Strong this planet is with the Force,
but he was also able to take advantage of the fact that Ezra and Kanan were in the Jedi Temple, which happened to be quite attuned with the Force as well. And frankly, Yoda sums it up best as he indicates to Kanan here.
No, I am here because you are here.
Now while speaking with Ezra for the second time, Yoda is able to project a vision of a moment that occurred in the past and ends up directing him to Morthal, which ultimately leads him to Obi-Wan as we see him roughly 6 years after Kenobi, who has clearly become much more wiser and attuned with the Force at this point. He goes on to explain in this scene that not only was he able to foresee that Ezra would come to Tatooine, but that he was not where he was intended to be, as he goes on to explain exactly how Ezra was deceived into locating him in the first place. Now as we go on from there, next we see Obi-Wan transcend into eternal consciousness as Vader strikes him down in Episode 4. Shortly after, is able to manifest his voice to Luke. Later, in the beginning of Episode 5, he appears to Luke in spectral form. And of course, next we see Yoda transcend into eternal consciousness himself. And this is all sounding good, but what comes next here is really where the train sort of gets thrown off the rails for a variety of fans, particularly when Anakin appears to Luke shortly after his death in Return of the Jedi, meaning that Anakin was able to become a Force ghost basically immediately after he dies, while Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan spent years of training learning how to utilize this ability themselves. Now, there are some crumbs out there that give us sort of an idea of what occurred. As an example, there is a source from Legends book, The Rise and Fall of Darth Vader, in the life and legend of Obi-Wan Kenobi, where they do offer a concrete and detailed explanation. And that is basically that Obi-Wan reached out to him at his time of death and helped him preserve his identity prior to losing his consciousness within the netherworld of the Force. And while, yeah, that's not recognized as canon, we do have a rather brief statement that was made by George in the commentary of The Return of the Jedi, which basically indicates the same sort of thing happened by means of Yoda and Obi-Wan, albeit in less words. But if any of this doesn't already have you scratching your head enough, in The Rise of Skywalker they choose to move the goalpost even further by introducing multiple characters from the past as Force spirits that frankly happened to die well before Anakin, like Aayla Secura as an example here, who obviously didn't survive the events of Order 66, but hey, with Disney you never know. Yet where they actually take this goes far beyond even that, because Qui-Gon specifically communicates with Rey here that every Jedi who ever lived lives in you, and she goes to communicate that herself, of course. So if you take that to mean that every Jedi has suddenly learned to achieve eternal consciousness like I do, then yeah, if Disney hopes to be able to connect the dots here at some point, they've got some explaining to do, which, lucky for you, is why I'm here, and this is where the fun begins for me. So yeah, let's get into it. Just keep in mind this is speculation, which of course takes us to the world between worlds here in Rebels Season 4, where Ezra revisits the Jedi Temple on Lothal for a third time, and discovers a gateway to this mystical plane of the Force that honestly is another thing that has a lot of Star Wars fans still scratching their head. And the first thing to note here is that Ezra isn't the only character we can see that can be found within the plane itself when he arrives. Morai was a female convor, which is a bird, known to have spiritual ties to the daughter from Mortis back in the Clone Wars. In fact, some believe that Morai was a servant of hers or even a manifestation herself in another form. And ever since she transferred her life essence on Mortis in order to revive Ahsoka, just like Kylo Ben, we can see Morai had been tied to Ahsoka ever since, randomly popping up pretty much wherever she goes, like here or here. And I'm suddenly being reminded how much I miss The Mandalorian. Oh, in here. Anyway, if Morai is able to manifest herself into the world between worlds without the need of a gateway, then surely there must be some explanation. And guess what? Filoni actually provides us with one. In an interview he had with Cinema Blend after the episode aired, he states that Ezra experiences the world between worlds several times in the series. He's just not capable of seeing its fullest expression until the fourth and final season. Alright, so back to this. If Yoda at this point can already demonstrate that he had the ability to project the vision of the past while within the world between worlds here with Ezra, then instead of physically plucking out someone from the past like Ezra does with Ahsoka and is tempted to do here with Kanan, perhaps Qui-Gon, Yoda, and Obi-Wan together found a way to reach out to a spirit at the moment of their death and help them preserve their identity before their consciousness fades away, just as they do with Anakin, as George indicates. Now, seeking out every Jedi that's ever lived in order to do this certainly seems like a rather large chore, for sure, but as we go back to Yoda on Dagobah here in Clone Wars, Qui-Gon indicates,
I exist where there is no future or past.
Meaning that time would have no longer been relevant for them at all. And as it may have just started at first with perhaps reaching Kanan or Anakin, with each Jedi they were able to convert, the easier the task would have become for those lending their aid to the process. But again, let's remember that time is irrelevant and is not a factor that should be considered for any of this. Now, as far as Kenobi Season 2 is concerned, all they would really need to do in order to set the stage and help bridge the gap if they wanted to go this direction is to have a scene that demonstrates that either Qui-Gon or Yoda had discovered a potential for reaching out to someone like Anakin at the time of their death in order to help them preserve an internal consciousness. No different than how Qui-Gon was able to do for himself originally in Episode 1, and exactly how George explained it in his commentary of Return of the Jedi. Anyway, we may never see a second season, and all of this could be a total pipe dream, of course. But you tell me, if we do get a second season, what direction would you like to see Disney take for the show? Feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed the content, be sure to leave a like and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future Star Wars videos. This has been Mike, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Peace.